Today I want to talk about some concerns I have with the direction that One D&D appears to be going, and in particular I want to talk about the open game license. Now, a lot of people don't really concern themselves with the open game license because they don't have to. If you're just playing the game, it doesn't affect you directly, and directly is a key word here. What the open game license does is it allows for third-party creators to use some of the material that Wizards of the Coast claims under copyright. And I will say claims here because there are some issues as to whether they're over-claiming, but that's sort of beyond the scope of this video. That would be a very lengthy discussion. But Wizards of the Coast claims all of these things under copyright, but allows them to be used by third parties under the open game license. And under this system, there's been a flourishing of materials. There's all sorts of adventures written out there. There's books of new monsters, new spells, all sorts of things. And so these are things that you can go and plug into your game. And people have made a living doing this. There's entire companies that now exist just making materials for the D&D system. And that is fantastic if you're a player or a DM, because you can take those things and plug them into your game. It makes life a lot easier as a DM. You can sort of go online and find an adventure that isn't one of the sort of few big adventures that are put out by Wizards of the Coast. There's all sorts of things you can include in there, and sometimes they do a better job than Wizards of the Coast. The Tome of Beasts includes a lot of monsters that are better designed than the ones in the Monsters Manual. Sometimes the challenge ratings might be a little wonky, but they tend to be a little more fun and interesting. So this is really important to the game as a whole. And to talk a little bit about how important it is, 3rd edition used the open game license, and there was a lot of these third-party materials. Now, Wizards of the Coast might not have been super happy with that at the time because people also used that to create Pathfinder. And Pathfinder is now the major competitor to Dungeons and Dragons. So in 4th edition, they kind of dialed that back and they restricted what people were allowed to do. And 4th edition wasn't terribly successful, and in part that's because of a sort of change in theme of how the game was sort of run, but in part it was also because there was less other stuff. There was less third-party materials, and so a lot of people kind of stayed with 3rd edition because a bunch of their favorite stuff wasn't getting updated to 4th edition. 5th edition went back to the open gaming sort of system. And that's once again resulted in this flourishing ecosystem of, of third-party products. What we've been hearing now is a rumor that One D&D, the next step of things might be ending the open game sort of system and instead trying to push people on to things like DM's Guild. Now, I am working on some Dungeons and Dragons material myself, and I will never publish it on DM's Guild. Sometime I could maybe do a video just looking at the license on DM's Guild, but it's really, really punishing. Not only does it require a major cut of the proceeds to be paid to Wizards of the Coast, but they also claim all sorts of rights to your material. And in fact, they would be able to essentially cut you out of the deal entirely if they wanted. So that is a big problem if they are sort of pushing people into this licensing scheme where, they basically own everything as a result. So it's not clear what'll happen to all of this sort of vibrant third-party creation that we're seeing. And without that, One D&D may be a lot more scarce. There's all sorts of reasons why they might want to do this. As mentioned, the Pathfinder issue, they might be saying, listen, we need to restrict this down so no one else can make a competing product. They might want to say, listen, we've got our own adventures and we want you to buy those and not ones put out by some third party. Or we want to make those third parties put it via DM's Guild where we get a major cut and those huge rights interests, that I mentioned. And also, they want to really push people towards their online system, right? With all of their little online miniatures and so forth that they want to, of course, be able to sell you for, hey, if you want the orc, that's going to be $3.99. Well, they might not be able to create those little online miniatures for, not the orc, but some new monster that you invented. And so that's something that they might think, okay, listen, that's worsening the experience on our end, or at least, if we're going to create those, we have to make a deal with the actual person who invented that new monster. So all of this appears to be a bit of a cash grab. Now, this is at this point currently a rumor. This is currently something that is speculation. We've got some people who said that they've received sort of suggestions of non-disclosure agreements that would restrict them from talking about this, but we don't actually have like a full leak. However, Wizards of the Coast was asked to comment on this and to confirm that they would have, the open game license. And they gave a very wishy-washy answer. I'll just quote it here. It says, "We will continue to support the thousands of creators making third-party D&D content with the release of 1D&D in 2024. While it is certain our open game license will continue to evolve, just as it has since its inception, we're too early in the development of 1D&D to give more specifics on the OGL or system reference document at this time," which is a really weaselly kind of answer. They haven't really specified that they're going to be sort of allowing people to enjoy the same experience. So instead, if they're looking to push people towards DM's Guild, that would be a very, very serious concern here. Now, I will note that there's lots of other games out there, and some of those games have different approaches to things. Right now, I'm running a Stars Without Number game. That's, that shows up here on this channel every once in a while as a live stream. And, Kevin Crawford has stated publicly that that people are free to use his system, just so long as they stay away from the sort of branded elements, which seems reasonable. That's akin to what the open game license does. In fact, a lot of game systems encourage people to make materials for their game because that's what players are looking for, right? They're looking for that system that offers all of those options. Anyway, as I said, I am really concerned about the direction that we are seeing here. Wizards of the Coast has said that they consider Dungeons & Dragons to be under-monetized, which means that they think that you, as a player or DM of Dungeons & Dragons, have too much money in your pocket at the end of the day. They want that in their pocket. That's concerning, especially, I've said this before, Dungeons & Dragons has a long history of being a game that was accessible to people across sort of the economic spectrum. It used to be fairly inexpensive to get into D&D, even, at sort of the base level. You didn't need to buy all these miniatures. I've played games with people where, we used a battle mat and our tokens were a little scrap of paper with our character's name on it. I've played some very humble games and some games that were, where people had elaborate collections of all sorts of materials. It seems like we might be pricing a lot of people out of the market, which makes the game less accessible, not more. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please do all the YouTube things, like this video, share it with your friends if you thought this was useful, subscribe to see more content. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to go and do a dive into like the DM's Guild licensing and so forth. That would be a lengthier discussion, but let me know if that's something you guys want to see. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you next time.